So we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, we have Jim Unsworth here. He's the Deputy Director of Idaho Fish and Game, and he's accompanied with his counterpart, Virgil Moore, who is the other Deputy Director. So I think we'll begin with a brief statement, and we'll open it up for questions. Jim.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. First, I want to express that the department is disappointed with this decision. We're sorry that the same stewardship that we provide to all the other wildlife in Idaho, we won't be able to extend to wolves at this time. Sometime in the future, we hope that that can occur again. What we're going to do today is like kind of what we were doing yesterday, and that's we're going to continue our non-hunting season management of wolves, continue to monitor the populations, track them, determine the reproductive potential and all of those things for this year. And we're going to continue to work with the folks, the citizens of Idaho, to prevent livestock depredations. So all of that's going to stay the same. Next week, we're going to go ahead, because we aren't going to have our fall hunting season, we are going to go ahead and submit a proposal to the Fish and Wildlife Service to do some control actions in the low zone. We're going to evaluate other elk herds we have around the state to determine if there are also other appropriate proposals to work with the service to do some wolf control action to reduce predation on ungulates. We're going to work, the department's going to work with Montana and others to determine if there's any way at all that we could salvage some kind of a hunting season under a listed framework. Many of you know we fish for salmon and steelhead, listed species, and so there may be some rock out there that we haven't turned over, and we'd like to pursue any options we can to do that. We've developed a process for hunters to get refunds on their 2010 wolf tags. That information will be on our website by this afternoon. We've sold about 6,000 tags since the first of the year, and hunters will be able to get a refund if they can show that they haven't used the tag prior to the March 31st end of the season, and then if they've bought them since then, they'll be able to get a refund. The Fish and Game Commission will meet on August 16th. They were to set the wolf harvest quotas, and they are going to go ahead and review some biological information. I'm sure they'll have a good discussion and provide the department with some policy direction on where we want to go next with wolf management in Idaho. The department will continue to provide the best biological information we can to other members of state government. We're going to work with the Governor's Office, Office of Species Conservation, our delegation in Washington, and certainly the state legislature to figure out what policy direction we need to go forward with. And I think with that, we'll try to answer any questions that you might have.
What's your biggest concern? You said you're disappointed with this decision. So what's your biggest concern by having the wolves put back on the endangered species list? To attack on livestock or what?
Well, the concerns are probably twofold or threefold. One is we do have livestock depredations that actually have been reduced this year, in part by our hunting seasons that we had last year. They're down quite a bit. So we would like to be able to continue that management, keep those problems at a minimum. We also have some issues with our elk herds in some areas of the state. We'd like to continue some management of wolves to relieve that predation pressure on some of our elk herds. And a third thing I think is very bothersome to us is that sportsmen in the state of Idaho felt like that they were a part of management, and that's going to be taken away from them now. And folks are just frustrated that they feel like they're not a part of solving the problem, or at least meeting the problem.
Can you not appeal this? Can you go to court and appeal this, or what?
Yeah, our attorney generals, we're working on that. We're deciding what the legal strategy is to move forward, and the decision to appeal is being worked on right now.
If the judge is saying that all states have to comply equally with an endangered species, what kind of precedent does this set for other animals? You mentioned salmon. Does this take? Are you afraid this might move to other game?
I don't know. Virgil might.
I'll jump in on that. There have been other species delisted based on state boundaries, much like the delisting decision that the Fish and Wildlife Service made before. There's never been a challenge to those. So what precedent that does to those species remains to be seen. We don't have any of those in Idaho that I'm aware of. They're in other states and areas. As far as how we are working on recovery plans for salmon and steelhead, those recovery plans are being done based on genetic units that are across state boundaries, and likely this decision wouldn't come into play there based on the direction we're headed with recovery on salmon.
Are you saying, I want to make sure I understand this, are you saying if you all appeal this, that would be the first time there's been a challenge to the listing of a species on the endangered roster?
No.
No.
What I was saying is the decision to overturn the Fish and Wildlife Service's delisting using state boundaries as the delisting unit has been done in the past. No one has ever challenged that decision until now with wolves. We don't, and so what precedent this sets on those other species that have been delisted is something that's unclear at this point.
Did you have any inkling this was going to happen, or was this a big surprise, or was there smoke on the horizon, or did this catch you all by surprise?
Well, I don't know if it's a surprise. It's disappointing from the standpoint that wolves are biologically recovered and have been since 2002. So disappointed maybe is a better descriptor than surprised.
What impact does the relisting have on Fish and Game's plan to allow trapping or snaring of wolves this winter? I mean, obviously you won't be proceeding with it, but that was a strategy that the agency had considered. Is that still a strategy you would consider in future under state management?
Those options have been outlined in our state plan. Actually, the judge approved our plan or thought our plan was adequate. So those aren't new options. They're things that have been out there for a while.
Are you planning to impose those? Can you, now that they've been relisted?
Right now, we're not having a hunting season of any kind.
Okay, and then also in past, what was historically, what was the impact of trapping and snaring on wolf populations?
I'm not sure of the impact historically. Certainly, when wolves were eliminated, it was probably a combination of all sorts of mortality factors, everything from trapping to poisoning to all sorts of things. But I don't know the exact.
Could you elaborate
impact.
more on the control actions that you envision at Molloy, et cetera?
Well, we're evaluating. We've established the impact of wolf depredation or predation on our elk herd up there. We're monitoring mortality on our cow elk and calf elk. We have pretty good estimates of the wolf population, and we'll make a determination the number of animals that we would like to reduce, the number of wolves we would like to reduce, and move forward with that. We would have preferred to use sportsmen to help us with that. Now we're put in a position of maybe more active management. We'll work with wildlife services.
How many wolves do you estimate are in Idaho?
Our estimation from last winter was right around 845, I think. 835, 845.
845?
And
Yeah.
the Molloy zone, how many wolves?
I don't have that right now in my... I'll have to get back to you on that number.
So you...
I have one question here. This is Sven Berg with the Post-Register. First of all, who is I jumped in a little bit late. Who's the gentleman who opened up the conversation here?
That's Jim Unsworth. He's the deputy director. And
Right, what?
He's one of the deputy directors, and also Virgil Moore, who is also deputy director.
All right, what was the first name? I'm sorry.
Jim Unsworth and Virgil Moore.
Okay, Jim Unsworth. Are you guys in any kind of conversations with the state of Wyoming to try to kind of encourage them to bring their wolf management plan in line with those of Idaho and Montana? Because the word coming out of both the federal Judge Molloy and also Fish and Wildlife Service is that that's the missing piece here is an adequate wolf management plan from the state of Wyoming.
No is the answer to that.
Okay.
Very shortly put.
Why not? It seems like it is the missing piece, so why not try to engage them on a state level to put together a management plan that might satisfy this judge?
The actions in Wyoming have been done at a legislative level. and consequently that is the law of the land in that state. And while we can interact with the agencies there, our ability to interact and play a role in the legislative process is what we're not dealing with at this point in time.
What's the essential difference between what Wyoming's doing or not doing and what Montana and Idaho are doing or not doing when it comes to wolves?
I think it's how they designated the animal. In a large portion of Wyoming, they were designated as a predator, and just a small part as a big game animal. In Montana and Idaho, they were designated as big game animals statewide. So
you disagree with the judge? I think the judge said that calling wolves endangered in one state and not having them endangered in another state is like saying an orange isn't an orange unless it's on a tree. So I guess what I'm asking is, you disagree with the fact that the judge is saying they can't be endangered in one state if they are not in the other?
Well,
I don't know if I understand that question.
I'm not exactly sure if I understand your question. I do believe it was a workable solution to have them delisted in Idaho and Montana and listed in Wyoming. They still had protection, and biologically they were functioning the same regardless of the political designation. So it makes no sense to me to reverse this decision.
That's a good answer to an awkward question. Thanks.
John, did you have anything else you were trying to cover? Anybody else on the phone?
Well, actually, yeah.
Okay.
Now that we're not going to have a hunting season, when the Fish and Game Commission meets on the 16th, are they going to consider control actions that might duplicate the mortality that could be achieved by hunting in lieu of having a sportsman season?
Well, I don't know if they would consider options to duplicate that mortality, but they will talk to us about other actions, that we could pursue similar to the Lolo action. And to do that, we have to have quite a bit of biological background information. We do have that data in several parts of the state, and so we'll be putting together packages to talk to the commission about.
Well, you're constrained by 10J.
Correct.
Okay.
What's the ideal population size in Idaho for wolves? You say at present there's 845. What's your goal?
I don't know what the ideal population is. The commission's direction and policy is to manage towards about 520 animals.
When you talk about these control actions in Lolo, you're talking about going out and shooting the wolves, right?
Yes.
But again, it would be very helpful to have an actual figure. What percentage of that pack, and how big is the pack, and what percentage or what number are you talking about culling?
I think you'll have a good opportunity to review the proposal here in a few days, and it'll have that information in it.
Do you have the information?
Yes.
So is there some reason that you're reluctant to share it with us?
I just don't have it memorized.
Okay, can I get that from you after this phone call?
We can sure try that, yep.
And so would I ring for you directly or somebody else at the agency?
You can talk to Mike Keckler, and he can get you in contact with one of our staff that has the
We're working on pulling that
Thank
information right now.
Yeah, that'd be tremendous. Very helpful.
This is Rob Cheney at Missoulian in Montana. What was somebody mentioned that you had an estimation of the number of wolves you would like to reduce and move forward. Could you be a little more specific about, does that mean Fish and Game wardens would be reducing wolves, or who would be doing the shooting of wolves?
Well, we're going to have to look at all of our options, but it could be a combination of Fish and Game officers and work with wildlife services.
Is APHIS still shooting from the air? Are they using 1080? What's the method now?
Wildlife Services uses a variety of techniques, including aerial gunning from fixed wing and helicopters.
This is Virgil Moore. I want to make it clear, though, they are not using poisons, and that poisons, you mentioned 1080, are not an approved or requested method in our management plan for management of wolves.
In Idaho?
In Idaho.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?